to be talking about an interesting subject this morning. The title of the talk is A Journey into the Higher Worlds, but in reality it's going to be more like a glimpse into the higher worlds. So I was thinking earlier today about the spiritual path that we are on, which is for most of us a path of Agni Yoga, the path of Agni Yoga teaching. And perhaps the most popular and the most well-read of this series of the Agni Yoga books is called Super Mundane. In fact, if you read throughout all of that series of books, it seems to be preparing us to have a relationship with the supramundane worlds. Therefore, we know that we're on a path of the future. It is a path that most sane people, balanced people don't consider. And the reason is because the majority of the consciousness of humanity is so mired into the dense world, into matter, into seeing is believing, that the only acceptance of thought that some in humanity would accept the idea of a supermundane world is if it's understood through science fiction. If we watch a science fiction movie and a book written by well-known science fiction authors, then we can entertain the idea because it's safe and it's, a popular book, but it's fiction. So this is something very different, a path that we're on, the path of Agni Yoga. But it's not different when you have experiences of the supermundane world. It just isn't different. Then it becomes a reality. And then you wonder about the rest of humanity. Why are they so buried in matter that they won't allow their consciousness to become free from matter, to become free from the physical body? Once you have that experience, and that experience is born through balance and integration, soul, personality integration, then it is as beautiful and inspiring and as real as listening to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. And I'm saying that choir because if you've ever heard that choir, it's elevating, it's uplifting, it's inspiring. Or some great orchestras, symphony music, that takes you somewhere beyond your body. So this morning, that's what I'm going to be talking about. Not the choir, but the supermundane world. We also call it the higher worlds. I'm going to be talking about 4 major steps that you can take to contact the higher world. And I'm going to talk a little bit about sleepwalking. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to be in contact with the mental world, the atmic world, or the intuitional and the atmic world. So this is why I'm saying these are just, this morning, the ideas or glimpses, into the supermundane or higher worlds. The first point that the teaching tells us that just blew me away, and it open the door to thought and ideas and sense of self that cannot be understood by reading psychological books or even having a PhD in psychology. It goes way beyond that. And this is the statement from the teachings. In the higher worlds, often we are superior to what we are in the physical world. Let that be your seed thought, for today and the next few days. Often we are superior to what we are in the physical world. The higher worlds, when we're in the higher worlds, we are oftentimes superior to that which we are in the physical world. Does that surprise you? It should be surprising. See, until you're there. And then when you're there, being there then really challenges you to be something better than what you are in the physical world. Many talents and powers cultivated in past lives but are not used in our present life reveals themselves to us in the higher worlds. Sometimes people will have a dream and say, wow, I was this and I was that and I could do this and I could do that in my dream. Wow, I wish that was real. Chances are it is real. How does this happen? We have such a complicated human constitution. It is so complex that we don't scientifically understand it, that we carry from one life to the next, to the next, to the next, an accumulation of our accomplishments. This accumulation can be recognized and found in our chalice, the chalice that's in the higher mind. And what's very interesting is it can even, how can I say this? I said this is going to be an introduction, so I'll keep it that way. There is a particular recording that records our activities in the physical world from one life to the next, to the next, to the next. Then there is a recording that records and accumulates all of our activities of feeling and emotion in the astral world. There's an astral consciousness, our astral body. There is a recording. Then there's a recording that takes place of our thoughts and our mental activities. When we are able in our subjective life to move into higher levels of consciousness, those recordings can be reflected back to us in our conscious reality. For some, it can only happen in a dream, and then they'll accept it in their dream, but they won't accept these recordings of accumulations of past lives in their waking state of consciousness for various reasons, but the most essential reason is karma. So I'm going to be getting into the how karma can hold us back, but how the practice of meditation can move us forward to where we can move into and have a conscious contact, a conscious understanding of the reality of the supramundane world. Once we have a rotor-rooter experience of eradicating, or perhaps a more spiritual word is, after transmuting and transforming and transfiguring our consciousness. In other words, eliminating our inertia and clamor and illusion. So, on one hand, when some of these recordings become registered in some level of our consciousness, it can also be very frustrating to us, because there's a part of us that will believe these dreams. There's a part of us that will believe these recordings, but then, we wake up in the morning, or we move from our meditation altar into going to the bank for being under deposited, and all of a sudden, that reality was a dream, and this is the real life here, is let's not get under deposited anymore. So it can be very frustrating. So we cannot use these revealing recordings in our day-to-day life because of various circumstances and karmic conditions. It is after we leave our physical body that they emerge. These experiences can emerge in their full power. So, if you have an active dream life, you really should make notations of it. The reason being is that you're probably more active in the subjective world in terms of creativity and constructing new pathways for humanity to follow, and to heal the mind of humanity than you're able to do in the physical body. So I do want to say one thing and warn you that some people will fantasize these things happening. And we don't want to do that. So again, these 4 points that I'm going to talk about will prevent us from fantasizing such experiences and really make them real to us. Like, for example, prayer. These 4 extraordinary but yet practical steps to take. Prayer would be one. The practice of silence is another. The practice of creativity is another. The practice of sacrificial service. These are the 4 essential points that will, with continuous practice, without even knowing that the frequency, the level of your awareness, your beingness is beginning to shift into living in this a super mundane life that's so natural for you. You'll never say, wow, that was a dream, I wish I could be that. Now you are that. We are often I hope I'm making sense in what I'm saying. I'm trying to go slowly here, which may not be a good thing, but anyway, we are often a different being in our higher bodies. So everything I've said up to this point, this is the synopsis, of it, that we are often a different being in higher bodies than what we are in our physical body. Now, the good news, there's the hope. If you say, that's certainly not me, she's not describing me. In later incarnations, we become synthesized. Our life becomes a synthesis of all of these past accumulations. Also, in some critical times, we do things that we never expected that we could do. And the reason is because these talents are within the history of our soul, can I put it that way? They're recorded. They're recorded in our physical atom. They are recorded in our astral atom. They are recorded in the mental unit. They are recorded in the mental permanent atom. All those recordings are there. They're accumulated in the chalice, in the higher mind. And if a situation comes up in our life that we may be called into service because of an emergency, or even a personal crisis may occur, that somebody will say, "Wow, I don't know how I did it. It was a miracle." It wasn't a miracle. It was because that unconscious part of ourselves, came into operation because we have been there and done that in a previous life. And it's stored in our unconscious mind. It is in the fourth initiation that our whole treasury comes under our control. And we dedicate that whole treasury to the service of mankind. We call such people our heroes. They leave us a legacy after they've moved on. They leave a legacy that people like ourselves always refer to, like Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi. We have a whole litany of people that gave us a legacy of their treasury, and then we're inspired, by them. So when we take the fourth initiation, we are given a new title, and that new title is Arhat, A-R-H-A-T. We become an Arhat. Now, moving on, there's a strange thing that happens to some people, and we read about it. Sometimes it's in a book. Other times psychologists may talk about it among themselves, that they have a client that sleepwalks. And it's a phenomenon, and sometimes it's scary because that sleepwalker will go out the front door of their home, and the wife goes running down the street, "Henry, come back here." And Henry is still in bed. Henry in his mind is still in bed. He doesn't know. Well, he doesn't know what's going on. And this is what happens according to the teaching. The teaching tells us that sleepwalker's etheric body has not disengaged from their physical body. So they're one of the same. And so where in Harry's mind, he's still in bed, physically, he's out there sleepwalking because the etheric body, the centers of the etheric body is still engaged with the physical body. They haven't disengaged. Typically, that disengagement takes place when we go into the astral level of consciousness. So during sleep, our astral centers normally disengage themselves from our etheric centers. But the sleepwalker, is still so glued to the physical body, he can't leave. So poor Harry, I have to make light of it so that we can see it humorously. But what is not so humorous is that person, when they die, are going to have an extremely difficult time moving into the higher worlds. So we don't want that to happen. It sometimes even happens that our mental body cannot disengage itself from our astral body. When this happens, there are a lot of difficult problems that take place, but there is a remedy, and that remedy is meditation and harmonious developments of our body. So I was thinking about that image that I had a teacher draw on a board for me 135 years ago, where, you know, we have a physical body and an emotional body and a mental body. And those three circles, the way that teacher drew them is the perfect integrated personality was where all three circles were the same and they overlapped. Then you have the craziness, where you have a very little circle at the bottom, that's the physical body, and a huge circle for the next body, which is the emotional. And then the mental body is even the size of a pea. Okay, well, obviously, if you can abstractly understand this, then you know that that person is not balanced. They do not have harmonious bodies. They're not comfortable in their skin, so to speak. So the challenge is that meditation is a process that will bring a harmonious balance to our physical, emotional, mental body. And with the right meditation, an integration process begins so that those three circles begin to overlap until they eventually move together into one. And as they move together into one, that's called soul infusion. This is the mystery of the power of meditation that most people don't know about. The higher worlds challenge us to further our attainments and our achievements. This is what Agni Yoga does. This is what reading about the supermundane world does. That these higher worlds, the supermundane world, challenges us to further our attainments and achievements. So how is it done? The comparison, the best comparison that we could consider is that when we graduate from kindergarten, we don't want to stay there. We want to be like those amazing high school seniors are. I want to be a high school senior. I want to have that kind of freedom. Then you get to be in high school senior and say, man, this is nothing. I want to go on to college. I want to be somebody. So that is like an analogy that our life is challenging us to be something greater than a kindergarten student. So we want to strive. So in essence, what's going to happen in this desire to strive, and I know we can all relate to this, is as our life advances, it presents problems, right? I mean, anything you do, as you begin to advance in that situation, problems ensue. I don't know of anybody that hasn't said so. Like, for example, simple example, when I went from high school to the university, I was hot stuff when I was a senior in high school. I went to college and I was nothing. And nothing meant when I was sitting there playing my beautiful violin, where when I was in high school, I was the best of the best. Now I'm in college, and it seems like everybody is better than I am. And so there's the challenge, there's the test. How can I surpass myself? So the problems are when you're in college and you want to be a party girl, you can't be a party girl and surpass yourself. So there's the first challenge. You leave high school, you leave mom and dad, you leave all those Iowa disciplines that were given to you. And man, I like to date every single night. Well, you can't do that and get good grades and do better. See what I'm saying? So little problems like that, and then there can be really big problems. So as life advances, it creates many problems, plus we add the problems that we've already created. So the beauty of these problems is it becomes a challenge, it becomes a test, it becomes a crisis. That's the moment we're either going to move into the next level of consciousness, increase our awareness, become a greater being, or we're going to be stuck. A time comes when at that critical moment, a time comes where we can no longer solve our problems at the level of consciousness, the level of awareness that we are. And so we try to penetrate into what? Into a higher state of existence, into a higher level of consciousness. It's sort of like the incy-weensy spider, remember, going up the mirror? I'm trying to make this really easy when I get to the point. It's not going to be so easy to understand, so bear with me. So a time comes when we can no longer solve the problem or that situation we're in without going to a higher state of consciousness. Some people, and this is a sad part, some people do not advance toward these higher levels for a long time, and they remain stuck to that same level of consciousness, that same plane, that physical body or that emotional body or that mental body. The reason is that their karma does not let them advance. This means their actions and deeds are not permitting them to advance, to proceed, to progress. The impetus for progress is in our actions on these different levels. If our actions are harmful, separative, greedy, and destructive, that person cannot proceed to higher levels of existence, to higher planes of consciousness. So when this happens, we have to transcend the problems and pay our karma. Now, as I was writing the talk this week and was hit so strongly when I learned that Anthony Bourdain had taken his life, it blew me away. I just, it hurt me for him that he would do that. And then we learned about, what's the girl's, Kathy Spade? Kate, who is it?
Kate Spade.
Kate Spade. And now there's a whole litany of information out there that we're learning that suicide rates are on the incline. And so why is this? This is why. This is what I believe. It's not the whole why, but it's a good portion of why people are taking their lives. The next higher plane of consciousness is coming into their being. They're seeing what they can be, and they can't get there. So their actions, their karma is saying, wait, you're in the middle of a crisis. You've got to do something different. You have to surpass what you know now in this state of existence in order to get across the river. So if your karma allows that to happen, then those recordings that I was talking about a little earlier, one will play back and you'll be inspired and you'll go to the right place or see the right person, make the right choice, and your life moves on. Okay, I don't want to spend a lot of time there, but I did want to, because so much is out there now on the media about suicide. Even our teenagers, the rate of suicide that our teenagers are taking their life, the percentage is horrible. It's horrible. So we want to have an education that when we recognize that a friend or a family member or someone that we can help is going through this potential suicide, that we can be there and help them through it. Takes some education more than just this knowledge, but you can do it and you can save a person's life by recognizing that this is a karmic situation they're in. Let's push them through it. To enter into a higher plane of consciousness without purifying and transforming your lower vehicles is not possible. It is not possible. Drugs, alcohol, particularly drugs and alcohol, closes the door, keeps us anchored in the physical body, detaches the centers of the astral body from the etheric body and the etheric physical body. And so the door is closed. They can't get beyond. That's why it's so dark. You know, it's so dark. This is why people go into depression. It's why they can't stop drinking, why they are so addicted to drugs. You know, anyway, I won't elaborate. I know that it is some people through mechanical means or drugs do penetrate into the higher planes, but what happens is they burn themselves. They burn those centers and they become insane. There's no reality for them. The higher world, I've talked to people, and this is why I know this is true, they go into the mental plane and they say, this is like going to a foreign country. I don't understand the language. I see signs, I see symbols, I see entities, and I don't know how to perform. I don't know how to speak to them. Same thing in their physical world. Same thing. Because they have rendered the veils, and the veils are no longer there to protect them. So stay away from drugs, stay away from alcohol. Who was it, the guy back in the 60s that was doing LSD? Timothy Leary, right. You know, he was having all these experiences. Well, if you read his biography, his experiences did not do him well later on in life. It burned his body. It is only through meditation, purification, creativity, and sacrificial service that we can enter into these higher planes safely and continue our evolution. On the threshold of, I just look, I'm on page 2. Okay, we I have to move ahead here. It is on the threshold of every plane, there are guardians who will check us to see if we are ready to move into the next plane. Sometime you can see those guardians. They will reveal themselves to you. And it's a beautiful moment because that guardian will do this or this. No words are spoken, just they'll present a form to you and you'll know that you're not ready if the head goes, no. So back to the drawing board. But we want those guardians to be there. They protect us. If we're not ready to pass into the next plane of consciousness, they'll protect us from going there and burning our bodies. There are tests that express themselves in our life in the form of certain crises. If we intelligently pass through these crises, then these crises become bridges. See these situations? Then we say, how in the heck are we going to get out of this situation? We find a way, we pass the test, and there's the bridge to the next level. Every problem, every crisis is nothing else but a signal that our soul is striving to pass on to the next plane of consciousness. The thresholds are crossed only by overcoming the crises. If the crises are not met with courage and daring and honesty, then we delay our progress. We remain on our former plane or level and enjoy ourselves in the shallow waters of our vanity and ego. If we pass on to the higher mental plane, we enjoy real harmony, beauty, serenity, joy, and freedom. So that's our goal, is to get our consciousness so refined and our atomic structure so geared that we can move into that higher mental plane, just like going from here outside. You just walk through the door, cross the threshold. The higher creativity comes to us from the higher mental plane, and this is why. See, this is why I'm saying this is just glimpses into the higher world. I'm just giving you glimpses here. We move our consciousness into the higher mental plane, and the reason we become more creative is because there is a storehouse there of ideas from the Buddhic plane of consciousness. So there is a live stream coming from the Buddhic level, the intuitional level of consciousness, into the higher mental plane. And once our consciousness moves there, it's like an elevator that takes us up, to a fully constructed penthouse, and we get off that elevator and into the higher mental body, and wow, beauty, freedom, joy, creativity is there. And these ideas that we find in the higher mental plane are the reflection of what's taking place from the Buddhic plane of consciousness. The intuitional plane, the Buddhic plane, is characterized by the experience of total oneness with all that is. Actually, it is a source of divine wisdom, and the beauties that we see on the higher mental plane are nothing else but wisdom that is reflected from the higher worlds. This is the plane, intuition. The plane of intuition is the plane of beauty, about which our mystics talk about, read about, write about, occultists talk about, where they say, I was in a state of bliss. I was in a state of ecstasy. That's the Buddhic plane, ecstasy. No one can explain the beauty. It's like we read about the story of, Nicholas Rourke saying all the colors that he experienced in the higher planes do not exist yet physically, right? The harmony of the higher mental plane exists in our chalice. The harmony of the higher mental plane exists in our chalice, which is the womb of our solar angel, where our soul, our living soul, is conceived. In the higher mental plane, beings are going to appear to you as flames with various colors. Communication with those beings in the higher mental plane and the intuitional plane, that communication is done telepathically. It's so quick. It is so quick that if you have not yet learned concentration, it will be like a quick flyby, and it goes shoo, and it's like, wow, what happened? What's going on? I don't remember a thing. It's in the intuitional plane that the hierarchy exists, and there are ashrams. There are ashrams in the higher mental plane and the astral plane, but they are but reflections of the true ashram that is functioning, fully functioning in the Buddhic plane, the intuitional plane. What is very beautiful is to learn that it is in these ashrams that the recordings, like we were talking about with our permanent atoms, the recordings of earlier, previous Manvantaras are in these ashrams. People who are in the intuitional awareness are in their own light. No longer the light of their solar angel, but their own light. Even in physical incarnation, they have their own light emanating from their intuitional eyes. To shine your light means to reach this level of awareness, of consciousness, and be light itself. I cannot believe how late it is. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's really tough to do glimpses, you know, because we want more. Okay. Every separative attitude that you have is the effect of attachment. You're attached to this idea. You're attached to your opinion. You're attached to your family. You're attached to your car. You are attached to your wealth or your poverty. All of these attachments prevent our consciousness from moving into a greater light. Then we have the Atmic plane, where we realize that we are just an energy unit. I mean, who of us here has experienced the Atmic plane? Maybe you've had a glimpse, and if you had a glimpse, you'll recognize this is where higher will comes from the Atmic plane, higher will. You don't have form, but you can take any form you want. This is why a master can be in so many places at one time. A master can manifest him or herself any way they want to. They can stand right in front of you. They can walk into this front door and manifest a form that we will all recognize. Oh, that's Master M, or that's Master KH. Or they will come in as a beggar and we'll exit them out the front door because they want to see, you know, what kind of character we're built of. Are they sneaky? You can't, no. But if they look like Master M or Master KH, come on in. So they can manifest any kind of form to see what our reaction will be. Okay. Can I race through this? The 4 points. Prayer. Your prayers must be done in real concentration, so don't pray when you're tired. I've done this, you know, I'll go into a prayer and wake up the next morning, and I never forget. Okay, I'm going to start again. Or you get halfway through the great invocation. So don't pray until you are fully awake and have real concentration. It is through concentration, your prayers that are in real concentration, where it is impossible not to receive an answer to your prayer. But if your intention is bad, the good answer punishes you. If your intention is good, the good answer uplifts you. In other words, how do I explain this? You pray, you want something, the good answer is given to you, but you're not yet ready to understand it or accept it or act on it. So therefore, it seems to work against you. Whereas if you are praying and you're ready for the answer, no matter what that answer is, you're ready to go for it, then it's a good answer. Say, okay. Silence. Silence means to stop the machines of your various physical, emotional, mental bodies, and you keep silence. Silence is peace. In silence, your soul communicates with the higher worlds. Silence is not meditation. You get into meditation and you move from meditation into silence, and that's where your answers come from, where your inspiration comes from, where your ideas come from, and then you move from the silence into a lesser frequency. The idea comes to your brain, and then you begin to work it out, put it into form. So it is meditation that gives us a way of touching the frequency of the higher worlds. Meditation, silence. I'm going to rush through this. Creativity is the third essential technique to contact the higher worlds. Creativity puts us in contact with the higher worlds. I was thinking of this story I've probably shared a dozen times of Stravinsky when he was interviewed and he was asked, "Where does your music come from?" He said, "From the fiery worlds." From the fiery worlds. Creativity puts us in contact with the higher worlds. Creativity is the process of self-actualization. Our real self is an inhabitant of the higher worlds. Higher worlds are those states of awareness in us that, when manifested in creativity, will transform the world through the power and frequency of the higher worlds. It's like we read, oh gosh, they're so out of time, I'm so sorry. It's like, I have so many stories. It's like we read about in the Agni Yoga teaching about the guiding hand. It's so real. And the guiding hand is the higher world. You're in trouble. You're like 2 seconds from a death-related automobile accident, and that guiding hand comes in and moves your car. It's very real. It happens like that. Flyby is so quick that you're on the side of the road, that car went on, you're alive, nobody saw it, but you experienced it. That guiding hand comes in from the higher worlds and saves you. Okay, I'm going to have to stop here. I'm sorry. But hopefully now you understand why I said, glimpses into the higher world. So read those. Well, there are now 3 books, 4 in one called Super Mundane. Some of them are published in volumes 1 and 2. Some of them are published in volumes 3 and 4. Some of them on the internet is just one big book. But all you have to do is look at the verses, everything is there. So do yourself a favor, start reading Super Mundane. And today's talk will really become alive, for all of us. Okay, that's it. Yeah, I wish we had time for questions. We just don't have time. We'll meet in the higher worlds and where there's no time.